And welcome to the Campus View Club here at the Peterson Event Center. The Pitt basketball team, the women's basketball team, taking on Boston College in a couple of minutes. So you might hear some sounds during the Jeff Capel Show. Our special guest tonight is Associate Head Coach Tim O'Toole. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Appreciate it. Nice couple of wins. You go to Florida State, always a tough place to play. And then you get down early to BC, but it comes together and you guys are able to control it. Talk about those two wins, the importance of those two there.
I think Jeff has mentioned this all year long and how important it is for us to be just locked into the first thing in front of us, right? And so obviously when you go down to Florida State and when you've been around this league for a long time, you realize how hard it is, period, And so we lost to Florida State here. We're going back down there. We know how talented they are. And we played well, and you've got to play well. And I don't think it's one of those things where sometimes you can get spoiled like we did against Louisville. But, rarely are you going to be up on top of someone and you just have a perfect night. And so Florida State was one of those games where it was a knockdown, drag-out kind of affair throughout the whole contest. Then to come back, and now you're back at home, and so you got to make sure, hey, Boston College is really good. If you think about their team, and again, they didn't have posts for the first half of the season. So, people can get misguided, if you would, by looking at records and things of that nature. But we're aware that, hey, everyone's got a lot of talent, and I think Boston College has a lot of talent, and they've beaten Clemson, and so for us it was you got to keep grinding your way through this, and that's the way it's going to be for the rest of our season. There's no getting around it, and our guys have done a good job of embracing that type of mindset that we're in it for the grind.
All right, I'm going to bounce around to a few things, but I think he held post to 7 points?
Yep.
How were you guys able to limit what he did?
Well, I think Feddy, let's back it up. I apologize. Anytime that occurs, it's a team effort. There's no question about it. We were throwing different coverages at him. Feddy did an unbelievable job, but Blake Hinson did a great job of helping out. He did a great job. Our guards did a great job of pressuring the passes that didn't, easily get to their destination. And so I do think it's always a group effort, but Feddy was spectacular in a lot of different ways. One, standing him up in the post because Post is a strong guy, but also on ball screen coverages because that's where they kind of get him in a mismatch. He can pop, and so you got to recover quick, or he can roll on you. And but that being said, I thought Feddy did a great job.
What stands out about him as a defender, about Feddy?
I think we got to keep two things. He's got great length, right? And a lot of people might have length, but if they don't use it, it doesn't really matter. And so one of the things when he's really effective, especially coming off of a ball screen, he's so long. And I remember Coach Krzyzewski used to talk about this about Chris Bosh with the Olympic team, that when he just came off of a ball screen, he was so long, there was nowhere to go. You couldn't turn around him because he was like 8 feet extended. And I think Feddy does have that capacity. And I do think the other thing about Federico is he is a heck of a lot stronger than anybody has any idea about. You look at him and you think, all right, he's really slight, but he's pound for pound really, really strong.
Is that an advantage for him?
100%. 100. I believe 100%.
So you can have the reach, but if your feet aren't in the right spot, then you're reaching and fouling. What allows him not to reach and use that length with good feet?
And I think it goes back, as you mentioned, that's balance. And so it's almost like martial arts, right? We use this analogy: if you see someone and they break a board, especially if it's 18 boards, and you crack it with your hand, it's just not your hand, it's your whole body. It's that point of impact. Feddy, as you mentioned, when he's long, he's also long, extended, and balanced. And so almost like a mix, like a martial artist, he's like a wall. And so it's not easy just to turn the corner on him, and he's doing it with balance.
If you're a guard or you're playing a perimeter player and you have a good feeling that your center will take care of a mistake, how does that impact how you can play defense?
Well, I think to some degree, you want to be aggressive defensively. That's part of this thing. You don't want to make too many mistakes because at some point you don't want to put everyone else at a disadvantage, right? And so, but it is a comfort to know that if you do get beat, that someone's there to help you. And then the flip side is, because you just got beat, well, someone is helping you. The helper needs help, and therefore you got to figure out your next play to get back into this thing. So it is comforting. However, you also want to make sure you don't make those mistakes too many times.
Yeah, you don't want to leave them
You're going to be sitting next to us for the rest of the afternoon or evening.
Associate Head Coach Tim O'Toole is with us here on the Jeff Capel Show. Nike Sabandi has that knack of all of a sudden going from 0 to 10 points in the span of 2 minutes. What is it about his game that he can have that type of instant offense?
One thing with Nike, we remind him of this all the time, is that you have tremendous fire, and you have to be you. So when you go in there, you need to let it all loose, and be you. And being you is aggressive. It's seeing opportunity. It's putting yourself in a position. If you get beat, recover. And I think when you go in there with more of that mindset, then you're not worried about making mistakes. And that's the hard thing when you're coming off the bench. You always feel like, hey, do I have a short hook or not, right? And it's going to be based on productivity. But one of the things Coach has done a great job with all of our guys, but especially Nike, was like, hey, you're a sixth starter. Like, you're going to play a lot of minutes and be you. And when you're you, you're really good. And subsequently, we're really good. So be you, be aggressive, have fun out there, and he's been spectacular.
Does he drive to set up the jump shot or jump shot to set up the drive?
I think because he's such an aggressive guy, the drive kind of sets things up, and I think that would be my vote.
Jamarius Burton, point guards are going to have their hands in a lot of things because they have the ball a lot. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if there's a stat or there's a place on the court where he doesn't have an impact. Why is it that he is able to have that type of importance with your team?
I think the word is leadership. When you find these guys that are just different, and his ability to lead and to understand big moments, big plays, where to go, who to get it to, it's no different than a quarterback, like Kenny Pickett. Like, you need that type of mindset to help orchestrate what's happening out there. And JB has it. He's got that physical presence where he's so big and strong that he can play at a slow pace if he has to, an inside pace, a fast pace. He's really been special, and it's been a lot of fun to watch because you don't see it every day. And but he just carries that personality. But he's a leader.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he says a lot, but probably when he talks, people listen.
One of the great things, I was just talking with Jason Capel, I think it was this morning, we were talking about Nike in one of the huddles at Florida State. It was in the second half. And he was talking to Guillermo. And relatively, this 8 minutes ago, in these types of timeouts, he's doing the talking and everybody else is listening. And Guillermo, but it was the way he was doing it where he was talking to him. He was also giving him the confidence that, hey, G, we are here with you. Do this, do that, stand this guy up. He was kind of walking through exactly what should happen. But it was also in a tone where it was like, gee, we are all here with you. We believe in you, bro. And it was really comforting because I kept thinking, here's Guillermo, who's just a freshman. He is playing in real minutes in the second half at Florida State. All of our games right now are must-wins. And so it's an unbelievable opportunity for him. But when you have the leadership and the older guys around you in that moment, just speaks volumes for G's confidence going forward. But then in the years to come, like, G will only be better because of the minutes that he's getting now. And Jamari's had enough of that powerful presence to kind of walk him through the scenario, but also like, hey, we need you. And in that game, going back to Nike, G did have those 6 points in a row in the second half when we needed it most. So it was kind of a really neat thing to see that leadership style. And you say he doesn't say much, but like the old commercial of E.F. Hutton, when he talks, you're going to listen. And we all listen to him.
Yeah, we could remember that commercial.
Yeah.
Some people may not get it. We get it.
I apologize.
No. I want to ask you about the Twins as we continue and their maturation and what it's been like coaching them as we continue. Associate head coach Tim O'Toole here on the Jeff Capel Show on the Pitt Panthers Radio Network. We're joined by Associate Head Coach Tim O'Toole, and last week at this time we had the biggest crowd we've ever had for one of Jeff's shows, and the Twins were here. And they entertained like this was, the Tonight Show. It was amazing. It really was. It was so much fun. They were loose. They were telling stories. What is it like coaching those two?
It's a lot of fun. It's again, I've been fortunate because I've been around sets of twins before coaching, and you realize, and that's one of the things I remember telling Cape when we first saw him, was like, these guys are different, and anyway, they just have a sixth sense for each other, and we call the triplets those two guys and Federico because they're always around. They're all like the same size, but they bring a buoyancy to them, to everything they're around, and so they make practice fun. They make the workouts enjoyable. They really have an amazing personality, and you'll say the same thing. They're worldly. And so they see
Yeah.
things differently.
Right.
Like I was kind of going over something today in practice, and they kind of grabbed me and said, listen, we're European. We understand this. We're not going to make these dumb mistakes. And I was like, well, do it anyway. But getting back to the Twins, they really have a very unique outlook. The best part about them, too, because everyone, especially in the recruiting process, saw the same size and thought they were the same players. And we kept
They're really
thinking
not.
they're not even close to the same players, and thought they could play together. And anyway, so they add such a unique flavor to what we're doing, and but they have been a lot of fun, and their energy is amazing every day.
Guillermo said he remembered when you first saw
What
them.
did he say?
That he loved your energy, and that he forgot what time he was supposed to meet you, and he wasn't sure if that was serious because he could only understand half of what you were saying at the
I
time.
was speaking fast.
Yes. So it ended up working. He said when he walked back in, he said you made a beeline right over to him, and he said he felt very at home and comfortable. And
Yeah. No.
but describe how those two are different.
So I believe when you watch them play. So I'm going to go back to that first time I saw them back in Florida, and Guillermo always had the higher reputation, if you would, coming out of high school, and Jorge was the one that was kind of slightly behind, if you would. And the day I went and saw him,
He says he's the better looking one, by the way.
and he'll.
Yeah.
Jorge says that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Poor G's got to kind of corral him all the time. But anyway, and the day I went down and saw those guys play, and I don't know if you remember our team last year, Jorge really shot it extremely well. And I'm watching everything from his release point to the timing he brings it up to the rotation, his balance, his ability to move, all these things. And I'm like, this guy has a real chance to be really good. And then watching Guillermo, who was, obviously really talented too. Guillermo was more of a guard because he could pass and like he just did a lot of different things. But Jorge was one of these guys that could really fill it up. And subsequently, every time I went to see them after that, that's exactly what they kept doing. And we had that one game where Jorge drove to the net and just flung it back behind him, and Guillermo hit the shot. That's what they were doing on a regular basis when I saw them at the prep school. They had a sixth sense for where they were going to be. And G, for the most part, was the one finding Jorge, and Jorge was hitting all these shots. And that's why I mentioned Cape. I think they're totally distinct players, even though they're identical and they're really long. And I still believe that. So it's kind of interesting because Guillermo does have such a feel for what's going on, right, left, north, south. He's elusive. He's got a tremendous basketball IQ, and he's an outstanding passer that can do a lot of things. Jorge could do a lot of things too, and I look at him more of like a wing. So one guy's like a 5, the other guy's like more of a 3, and so they kind of can complement each other, which is neat in my opinion. And when you see those three together, especially if Fetty's playing the 4 or the 5 and G's at the 5 and Jorge's the 3, they're long, flying around, swatting at things, and it impacts anybody that's playing against them. Because this is the one thing I learned when I was assistant coach at Syracuse and we were in the zone. You can see things, laterally, but when you're worried about what's flying around on top of you and then go to shoot it, your concentration is completely messed up. And that's what happens with Syracuse zone. But when you see those 3 guys out there playing around and flying all over the place, it changes the players, like what you're looking at. And if you're looking at other things besides the rim, it's going to be harder to shoot.
All right, the third member of the triplets is going to join us next, Federico. Of course, Nate will tell you they're quadruplets. They're not triplets. They're quadruplets. But Federico
Give him a hard time, please.
Is going to join us.
Yeah,
you're going to be with us. So
right,
you can help us give him a hard time
like
as we
that.
continue. Tim O'Toole on the Jeff Capel Show on the Pitt Panthers Radio Network. Welcome back to the Campus View Club here at the Peterson Event Center. The Pitt women's basketball team is leading 13-5 over Boston College, as we're joined by our special guest host tonight is Associate Head Coach Tim O'Toole here on the Jeff Capel Show. And we are joined right now by Federico because what we know is you can't get enough time with Tim.
Yes. Nope. Every day we coach O'Toole.
What's it like to be coached by Coach O'Toole?
What's your answer to, by the way?
You want the truth?
No.
No, it's fun. It's fun. He pushes me. He pushes the twins. He makes us better. Makes us better.
If you watch highlights and something happens in the game, I don't know if anyone gets off the bench faster than Coach O'Toole.
Yep.
Or gets excited faster. What's his energy like to be in a practice setting?
It's great. It's great. He got awesome energy. He's always there jumping with us, hitting us, playing with us. It's great. It's amazing. It's amazing.
What's this hitting thing, Tim, with the bags? We're hearing the players
I don't know
discuss.
anything about that for whatever reason.
It's just contact, practicing contact.
How do you practice to that point? What do you do to help make Feddy better, to help him play through that contact, because it's something he'd never experienced before?
Well, a couple of things, and I think the Twins are in the same boat as they were. Again, they commented about them being European and they're far superior, at least intellectually, to me this afternoon. But I do think one of the things is to kind of introduce him that there is going to be contact, and then how do you concentrate through that contact? Because once you kind of get used to that, you're fine. But what happens initially when you get hit, you try to protect yourself, and then as you move your hands, you no longer can catch. And I do think with bigs, those are kind of important things. Their hands and feet are everything. And so the better they can kind of get used to absorbing some contact and still being able to catch. And then the next thing is, all right, how do I rip and go wherever I want? And that's the one thing about Feddy and especially in Chi and Jorge. They're really, really skilled. What we were talking about before you got here, Feddy, was that how strong you are. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but you really are. And it's a great tribute to you, but it's also, I think people can lose sight and think, all right, he's slight, but they don't push you around. And, again, it's a heck of a thing for you. And now we just got to help to kind of play a little bit more of an Americanized game, even though he's better not. I shouldn't say you're not better not, but you're better kind of being who you are and how we can kind of move you in and out so that we got to get used to some contact, but you don't need to be a power guy.
Yeah.
Can you tell if an opponent thinks that they can push you around?
I think everybody really thinks they can push me around. Start of the season, I got pushed around, but now I feel like I can hold my ground.
Why is that? What's different?
I think it's confidence, working with T.O., playing against players like John. It's just, I just got it over time.
You didn't get here till what, August?
Yeah.
Is that some of the things you weren't around? You had to learn these guys and really fit in?
Yeah, I didn't get to practice with Coach O'Toole or any of the coaches till I got here, and yeah, I would say so.
When you got here and everybody was together for the first time, from your standpoint, what did you think, and when did you know this is going to be a good team?
I think it right away. The first day I came here, Greg texted me and was like, "Let's hang out." Everybody was checking on me. So I say second day I saw Coach O'Toole.
Uh-oh. A little different conversation than with Greg.
Yeah.
All right. From each of your standpoint, what do you remember about the first time you guys met?
Well, he was talking a lot. But this was great. It was great. It was on my visit here. Coach was telling me all kind of stories.
Yep. Well, and there's kind of two. I think about obviously your visit when he came, and then also the first day I saw him in the back gym, and we kind of worked together, and it was like that first time. And we had seen plenty of film, but actually when you see him live, and then what he could do, and I remember just going to Jason Capel right after him, like, oh my God, he has an amazing upside, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And one of the things I was thinking when you just mentioned about your strength too, I think Vince has done an unbelievable job with you guys as well. And you combine that with your experience, and you're just getting stronger and stronger and better and better.
All right, I want to ask you some more about your teammates and what it's been like for you at Pitt as we continue. Federico, Associate Head Coach Tim O'Toole here on the Jeff Capel Show on the Pitt Panthers Radio Network. And our special guest host, Associate Head Coach Tim O'Toole, we're joined by Federico. We did have, it was just Amanda, Casey, Matt here, but you've now drawn in a fan to watch.
Yep. Jorge Diaz Graham.
the better looking of the two twins, if I remember correctly from last week. What's it been like to be teammates and to be part of the quadruplet family with them and Nate Santos?
It's amazing. It's amazing. They are my teammates, my brothers. We hang out every day. We chill. We just click like that.
Is there a comfort level because they're from Europe? Like you guys have a different bond?
Not really. I just feel like we just click. We just friends like that. Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have a mic, and you do. So if there's anything you wanted to say about him, right? I mean, this will be the time.
Nothing really. Nothing really. They
I wouldn't do that.
amazing friends. Yeah.
Who's the better shooter, you or Jorge?
Jorge got it.
Seriously?
Yes.
Who's the better defender?
I want me.
Tim, we were telling a story during the break about. Could you set that up for us?
Yeah. So we were fortunate. You're going to have to do the explanation of the word Sisu because every now and then we'll be screaming Sisu. And but when we played one of our exhibition games early, Fedi from Finland, one of the greatest honors that they part of the military contingency of the leadership was here from Finland. And when they saw Fedi play, they wanted to meet him so badly. And they had this sledgehammer, a big sledgehammer, and in the word it says SISU. And I want to say it's dedicated to almost like a Purple Heart or a high level of bravery. A person that's willing to commit himself for any cause and lay his life on the line. Correct me if I'm wrong,
no,
Sisu. Right. But when I saw this and I heard it, and it's almost like his position and what it means to our team, it's like it's fitting. Like you've got to be that guy. You've got to do all these things. You are the lender of the last resort. You got to help each other out. And his personality fits. And if you can explain Sisu better than I can, because I'll yell it a lot.
Sisu is like an inside force, like toughness. It means toughness.
Hard.
Yeah. They use it nowadays mostly in Army. They used to use it more commonly in old days, but it's just toughness. They came here with the guest came here with the sledgehammer. That's a Sisu. Big ass sledgehammer.
These are like high military like generals, but they're talking with such great pride that's associated with this word. And again, when you think about how Fedi plays, he plays with tremendous pride. And that's why he's such a great teammate. But anyway, it was kind of fitting, and he's got this giant mouth. You have to, next time you're on the show, you got to bring it. Show everybody that.
So you're early in your career here, and that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, was that a touch of home? Like, what was that thought when that happened?
It was like, after the game, I was walking back to the locker room. Then I hear feeling like people speaking Finnish. I was like, wow. I was like, whoa. Did I hear this shit right? But then coach brought them to the locker room.
They were so fired up to see you, Fedi. It was awesome.
You had to be fired up though too.
I was excited.
And you played, from what I remember, I think you had a double-double that afternoon?
Yeah. One of the early games.
So he backed it up, too.
How often does your family, I know the time difference can make it tough because it could be, we were talking with Jorge and his brother, because it could be middle of the night when games are going on. How much can your family watch or follow?
They try to follow me play. They try to watch the early games. But the late games are a little tough because they
noon
have to work.
Games are good, right?
Yeah.
For your family.
Noon games is the ones that they watch, but late games they really can't because they got work. But my dad got ESPN app now, so he checks that every day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Have they been over here recently?
Yes, my mom, my dad, and my little brother. They all was in town. My little brother went to Duquesne visit Duquesne, and I got to see him. And then my mom and dad came here to see me. My auntie also.
Nice. When I imagine little is a relative term. Like how tall is little brother?
6'9".
Yeah.
6'9".
What precipitated the going to First Love, and then how did you end up there, and then in northern Oklahoma?
Always had a little. I always knew that I want to come here to USA, play basketball. So when I got the opportunity, I just took it and loved it.
What was First Love like?
COVID year, not the best, but I had great friends. Like I got to meet people. I got friends from France, Senegal, France, Senegal.
And then you're in the middle of the United States in Oklahoma.
Oh, first day was like wow. Like when I flew in Oklahoma, we went. Coach came to pick me up. We drove a couple hours. In the morning, I woke up middle of nowhere. I saw cows. I saw horses walking. I was like, wow. But it ended up being good. It ended up being good for me.
And you ended up here.
Yeah.
Was that, when you met everybody, was it pretty much clear in your mind, like, this is where I want to be?
It was. It clicked with everybody. I felt great. I felt like I was home. So it was just great for me.
You know, it's amazing. Tell them who you were on your visit with.
Justice Graham.
Well, and no, who else is currently on our team?
I came here with Blake. Was here with Blake
really?
same time.
Geez.
Yeah. So.
Did you even say a word?
Yeah. It was in the same hotel. I got to hang out with Blake, Nike, and John when I came here. So it was great. We talked a lot about basketball, what we want to do here, what they want to do here, and how they want me to be here too. So,
Tim had mentioned pride earlier when we were talking about the sledgehammer. What kind of pride do you take in the defense that you've played, especially here over the last month plus?
I'm just trying to help my teammates do my part and make sure we do good, get better every day.
You know, often you hear players like, they feel good if they score X amount of points. But that's not, you don't have to be that way.
No, I don't have to be that way. I'm happy with the blocks, stops, just being with my teammates.
Are there also things that we can't show on a stat sheet that you feel like you do that helps out? Like maybe it's just coming off a screen or deflection or something like that.
I mean, everything that helps the team is amazing for me.
If I could try to answer that, because you're probably not so much aware of it, but Jeff brought it up today in our film session. One of the things, and Chris Paul brought this up a year ago or 2 years ago, where he said they should keep a stat for bigs where they should get a half point for every time they do something, whether it's with a screen and roll that creates an opportunity for a guard to score, or the same thing when they're rim running. And so the other day, Feddy, it was pretty cool. You see him flying down the court. And because he's flying, I think it was Langford had to pick him up, and then Ferry buried him deep under the basket. And then Blake Henson was trailing. And because Feddy ran so hard, then Blake was wide open. And so it was one of these baskets, as you just alluded to. No one in a stat sheet would have seen this play, but everyone on our team did. And, we were screaming on the bench because we knew how valuable it was. But Feddy set up the whole play. Blake scored, I think JB got the assist, but Feddy created the opportunity, and he does this often. And so, a lot of, whether it's Jorge or G or obviously Feddy, they do a lot of these things that no one has any idea about that really help your team score or defend, and people aren't aware of that.
Tim, before we let Feddy go, I just want to get your thoughts on what it's been like to coach this group of post players.
It's been a lot of fun. I mean, I mean this sincerely. They force you to laugh. They really do. They've got wild personalities, as you know. They're all relatively stubborn in their own right. They have their own opinions on certain things, but they do bring a high level of energy. And the funny thing about these guys, like even Jorge being here right now, they do like being around each other. After practice every day, they're shooting, they're doing things, they're competing against each other. And you, like, especially as a coach, when these guys are willing to put in the additional time, then great things are going to happen for them. And so that's part of the fun, is when you see these guys, and now we're in February, they're still doing it, nothing has changed. Their ceilings are so high, and then you just hope that they can keep that positive outlook, because, again, if that's the case, then they're going to ricochet to a high place.
Federico, thank you.
Thank you
for coming out here and joining us. We're going to be joined by Mike DeCourcy, who's a national sports writer, and get his thoughts on the Panthers. But next, I want to ask your coach what it's like to be a coach when you play on Valentine's Day.
It's not good. It's not good. It's not
Tim
good.
O'Toole on the
That's
Jeff
right.
Capel Show on the Pitt Panthers Radio Network. Welcome back to the Jeff Capel Show. We are at the Campus View Club here at the Peterson Events Center, and the Panthers women's basketball team up 26-18 on BC here in the first half. We're joined on the phone by Sporting News Hall of Fame writer Mike DeCourcy. Mike, long time no talk to you, Mike.
Good morning, or good evening, excuse me. How are you?
I'm good. Tell us, from your standpoint, what has stood out to you about this Pitt team?
There's two things that stand out to me the most. First of all, the offensive ability, and I guess a good word would be audacity. I love how they believe in themselves and each other. I mean, I've seen Sabande take really big shots in really big circumstances. And I think I look at the Florida State game. I guess that was last week, earlier this week. Sometimes the games start to run together, but I loved his confidence down the stretch, and we've seen that with Hinson and Burton, and those guys, they don't hesitate to take those big shots. A lot of teams maybe only have one guy. If they're good, they might only have one guy who, when that pressure is on, then if that guy's not taking the shot, then it's probably not a good shot. But these Panthers have multiple players who, in that circumstance, are willing to take it on or eager to take it on, but not to the degree of taking bad shots, poor quality shots. If the shot is there for them, they're going to go for it. If they can create a shot, they're going to take it down the lane and make a layup. I've been very impressed with that. And then the toughness that they showed, I've talked about this before, the toughness that they showed at the end of the Miami game, that was big time to me. Because they didn't play well that day. And they managed to come back, and they almost blew it, and they were resilient about that. I really admired that.
It has been, obviously, it's the Jeff Capel Show, and Associate Head Coach Tim O'Toole is with us today, Mike. But it has been a conversation point for fans around here for this week especially. Do you think this Panther team is being undervalued as one of the better teams in the nation?
Yeah, I know people worry about the rankings, and I've been pretty vocal about my disinterest in the rankings, and I know they matter to fans because they're what's out there, but I think that the problem Pitt has is that the numbers don't like them. I think that's a real issue. That's something that is going to impact how they're viewed by the selection committee. I don't think it's going to impact whether they get in or not. The committee generally selects teams based on what they accomplish. But I think that over the last 3 or 4 years, the idea has been select on what you accomplish, seed on how powerful you are. And the predictive metrics don't love the Panthers. And even if you go to the result-based metrics, they don't love them either, which is usually with a team that's accomplished as much as the Panthers, with a 5-2 quad one record, with a 7-2 road record. Usually the results metrics are going to be throwing flowers at your feet, but that's not really the truth. I mean, strength of record for ESPN, only 41, KPI, only 34. I don't think that really captures what these Panthers have accomplished, and I think some of that is dragged down by what is I don't want to diminish what they're accomplishing, but it's a poor season for the ACC, and so that you play against a Louisville, a Florida State, a Wake, less so a Wake, a Georgia Tech, Boston College. They just did not accomplish much in non-conference, and some of them aren't being very successful in conference, and that drags you down.
Mike, you mentioned the toughness and the willingness to take tough shots as two of the attributes. How well does that play out in your history of watching tournament play? How big are those two factors in teams that are successful in tournaments?
Well, if you're going to be good at one or the other, or I shouldn't say that. If you're going to be great at one or the other, offense is a better thing to be great at. And if you can get your defense to be good, adequate to good, and I think that's what Pitt has. I think at minimum, that's what they have. If you look at the numbers on that, 74 in the country, not a great defense, but a defense that can step up when it needs to, as they did at the end of that Miami game, as they did at the end this past weekend against Florida State when they needed to get some stops, to get some distance in between themselves and the Seminoles. They did that. Offensive end, I think being able to be efficient and being hard to guard is what allows you to go through NCAA tournament games that are really well scouted. Tim's been through this at Duke and at Syracuse. I mean, you're scouting the heck out of everybody that you play, and the whole idea is to take away everything that they want. And then what ends up mattering a lot in a lot of those NCAA tournament games is there's somebody. It might be a Carmelo Anthony. It might be a Jason Tatum. It's somebody that you just can't take him away from what he wants to do. Even if you can take away what Duke or Syracuse or Pitt wants to do, that guy's still going to beat you. And I like that Pitt has multiple guys that can take the ball to the rim. And whether or not they go and try to finish it themselves or kick it out, they've got multiple targets on the perimeter that are really capable from three-point range.
All right, Mike, you grew up here. Last question. For kids in school now, what's the impact for this area of a winning Pitt basketball team?
Well, for the longest time, I mean, almost from the time that I was getting ready to leave Pittsburgh until the last 4 or 5 years, there really, the impact was only on the fans. Like, if you had a great team like they did in, from 2002 to 2012 or so, the impact was the Pete was filled, and it was one of the great places in the country to watch a game. But there weren't any players to persuade to come to Pittsburgh, or to persuade to come to Pitt who were from Pittsburgh, I should say, or from the area. There just weren't any. There might be the occasional guy. I remember Ben McCauley from York was like the only Division I big-time player they had for like a decade. And now you're starting to see guys like Jalen Hood-Schifino playing well at Indiana, or Ethan Morton up at Purdue. And you're seeing more and more of these guys. So Pitt can start to get, as they've done so beautifully for so many years in football, saying to the WPIL kids, you come here and look what can happen. And they did it with DeLon 10, 15 years ago, but it hasn't been common enough. And now the players are starting to develop again. So I think that this kind of season can remind the younger players who weren't around for Julius Page and Brandon Knight and those guys, or even Brad Wanamaker and that group, it can remind them what Pitt basketball can be and how exciting it can be in the city when the Panthers are this good.
Mike, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Oh, Jeff, thanks very much. I enjoyed it.
Our Sporting News Hall of Fame writer Mike DeCourcy here on the Jeff Capel Show. When we come back, we're going to ask Tim O'Toole a little bit about some of the things we discussed. And there was a really big birthday in basketball, a milestone birthday in the game we're going to discuss as we continue on the Jeff Capel Show on the Pitt Panthers Radio Network. We're joined by Tim O'Toole in a couple of quick segments here. When you see that you're playing on Valentine's Day, how do you explain that to your wife?
Painfully so. Yeah, that's a hard one. It's her favorite day of the year, and we're home at midnight. Yeah, it didn't work.
The wives are so important to what you do. In all seriousness, I mean, if to make everything like to have her understand is huge.
It's so true. There's one of the things about college basketball now is that there are no more weekends, and theoretically we practice Christmas, we practice through Thanksgiving. There are no holidays, and so when you get Valentine's Day, you're hoping, all right, now
get that
9 o'clock game, let's roll right through it. But the wives are everything.
All right, I want to ask you a little bit about Virginia Tech as we continue on the Jeff Capel Show on the Pitt Panthers Radio Network. What kind of challenge will be playing at Virginia Tech?
Well, Blacksburg is always a really, really hard place to play. Mike Young does an unbelievable job, especially offensively. They're always really good shooting. Kid Mutz is having an absolute fabulous year. He does a lot of things, but they have an inside-outside combination. The kid Bastile's really talented as well.
All right, thanks to Tim O'Toole, to Federico, to Matt Plisga, Amanda King, and Nicholas Callis. We'll see you next time on the Jeff Capel Show on the Pitt Panthers Radio Network.